Now let's talk about defend media freedom. Communications Professor Prof.Karikari has called on President Akufo-Addo to reinforce his lifelong stance as an advocate of press freedom. Adding his voice to the ongoing #Defend Media Freedom campaign, the Dean of Communication Studies at Wisconsin University said despite critical roles the president played to advance freedom of expression in Ghana, it is unfortunate that press freedom is currently under recession during his regime.
What you have raised, that is press freedom, threats to press freedom in this country and under President Akufo-Addo, it's a very sad case.
Why do you say that?
No, as an individual citizen, when I say it is sad that press freedom is under recession under Akufo-Addo, I'm saying this because he's a man I have always respected in this terrain, in the terrain of human rights, in rule of law, in good governance, and so on. Now, under his administration, we are seeing a number of incidents that are not very happy, that do not conform to or do not show that under such a man, these things would be a thing of the past. Let's remember that he's played some very critical roles in press freedom. I remember that about 1992 or 1993, when we were struggling for press freedom, when we were working for the freedom of Akufo-Addo, Haruna Atta, and others who were being incarcerated left and right, we set up an organization called Friends of Freedom of Expression.
Okay.
And Nana Akufo-Addo, then in opposition at the time in the 1990s when Professor Dubois was the head of the MPP, Akufo-Addo was a very active member of this advocacy organization made up of journalists, academics, and so on and so forth. Now, he's also been the main proponent as Attorney General in the legislation to reform or repeal the criminal libel and seditious libel laws. Now, as president, he's also done the remarkable job of getting the right to information law passed when all previous governments or previous regimes had poo-pooed it and had not really cared much about it. So I still believe that this man believes in press freedom. He believes in human rights, both in public and in private. And I have had the opportunity when he was in opposition to have had some occasion to talk to him about these matters. And I do know that both his private sentiments and his public expressions have been the same. There have not been any contradiction in that. So under his government, if we are seeing, for instance, journalists mounting a campaign for press freedom, then we ought to sit back and reflect. But also not just sit back and reflect. Call him as president to say that he shouldn't keep silent. He must come out boldly and make a statement, reinforce the statements he's been making all his life about these freedoms. Because as president, if he came back on air, addressed the nation, recognizing that there are these problems, I think that it will help all of us.
You've made this call in the past before that you expect the president to speak. He hasn't taken that opportunity. And we've seen other events post the call you've made, and others have made so, same call, that seem to suggest that recently, the recent cases as a journalist or in their own stables of graphic who have been assaulted, but it talks about the state's own role. The modern Ghana incident, where first of all, the allegation is that, well, now it's proven, the state agencies called and said, pull down a story, the editors obliged. The next thing they notice, their offices are raided, they are arrested, and kept for 48 hours and let go, and then allegations emerge of people being tortured.
Yeah.
You'd never think that a story like that would happen. I mean, forget about that Akufo-Addo, but
Yeah.
in a country like Ghana,
Yeah.
which is celebrated across the world as one of the
Yeah.
doyens of press freedom.
Yeah. But that's precisely the point, that we shouldn't take our rights for granted. You see, for the past 20 or so years, we've been touted all over the world, around Africa. We go with our shoulders high, our chest up, oh, we have freedom of press, and so on and so on. All of what is happening tell us that we should not be complacent, and we should continually fight for these rights.
Have we been complacent, you think?
I won't say.
But the kind of fight, and the fight, that effort you put in, and you and your generation put in,
different actors, yes.
We don't see the same here.
Because
the unity you have, we don't have.
No, because for many years now, there was no need for a certain level of advocacy, of activism, because it was here. We were using it, and therefore there was no real need. I mean, take this Fourth Republic. Apart from Rawlins's time as president in the Fourth Republic, when press freedom was really endangered, under Kufuor, under Atta Mills, under John Mahama, we've had a honeymoon. There hadn't been any major issues. The normal, or let's say the day-to-day things that happen against journalists have been mostly, and most of the time, the police.
Yeah.
You know, assaulting people left and right, seizing cameras, and, you know, behaving ignorantly. There have been, of course, since the Fourth Republic, a number of non-state actors who have also come into the terrain to create problems for journalists. One, and that's not really surprising, criminals.
Yes.
Regular criminals, like drug, pushers, who, when they appear before court, try and assault journalists who want to take their images and so on. Then, what is also very curious, latterly, and over the period, are what I'll call these Jesus exploitation churches.
The churches.
I'm talking about these one-man churches, Jesus exploitation churches. We've seen some so-called pastors go into studios with all manner of gadgets to attack journalists. We've seen other activities.
Journalists going to a church to do the work and assaulted.
Like what has happened in the last week or so. Those are very curious or very new developments. But I suppose under democracy, all kinds of people have the freedom to